Welcome back to True Echo, where we bring you real stories that feel too powerful to be fiction. Stories that challenge what we believe about success, about dignity, and about those we too often overlook. If you've ever felt underestimated, this one's for you. We're done. The company's finished. The word settled like concrete in the air, thick and unmoving. The once proud boardroom of Ellington Tech had been reduced to a chamber of defeat. The windows that once reflected ambition now reflected resignation. Executives sat slouched in leather chairs, ties loosened, hands clenched. Everyone looked down, no one dared to meet each other's eyes. It was over. Their last investor had pulled out. Their once promising AI division was hemorrhaging funds. Audits were failing. Morale was gone. Bankruptcy paperwork had been drafted, unsigned but lurking in Clara Ellington's drawer, as though its presence alone cursed the building. Clara, the young, sharp, blonde CEO with too many burdens and too little support, sat at the head of the table, eyes hollow. No one spoke. No one moved. Then the door creaked open. Every head turned in mild annoyance. They expected an assistant. Maybe another lawyer. But no, it was someone they didn't expect at all. A black woman in a janitor's uniform stepped in, her mop still in hand, sweat on her brow, her back curved from long shifts. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not now. Not ever, in this room. But she walked in anyway. Gloria. Sorry to interrupt, she said, her voice even but firm. But I know who's stealing. The silence turned electric. Confused, incredulous stares met her. A few executives blinked, frowning as though trying to place her face. Gloria didn't flinch. She had worked quietly for years, watching everything, saying nothing. Until now. This was the moment. She hadn't planned it, not exactly. But when she saw the faces, the defeat, the collapse that no one else could fix, she knew she had to speak. Even if no one believed her. Gloria's story didn't begin in a mop closet. 8 years ago, she had worn heels, not slip-resistant shoes. Her name had been printed on office doors, not stitched onto a uniform. She'd been a forensic accountant with a flawless record, until the recession took her home, her husband, and eventually her career. When her savings ran dry, she took the job that was offered. A janitor's badge at Ellington Tech. She accepted it, not with pride, but with grace. Cleaning floors she once walked in authority. Wiping windows of the same glass offices she used to hold meetings in. No one knew. No one asked. No one cared. And that was their first mistake. Because Gloria noticed things. She listened when they thought she was invisible. She studied spreadsheets left on copy machines. Overheard whispers while scrubbing coffee stains. She saw which rooms stayed lit past midnight, which paper bins overflowed with shredded reports, and more importantly, which names kept appearing beside unusual vendor charges. That was when she started keeping a notebook. Hidden in the hollow underside of her janitor cart. Names, numbers, patterns. Nothing illegal, yet. Just enough to raise suspicion. Just enough for Gloria's old instincts to kick in. She didn't need company access to know what to look for. Numbers had rhythms. And these rhythms were wrong. Wrong enough to sink a company. She could have walked away. It wasn't her responsibility anymore. But watching good people lose their jobs while smug executives grinned like wolves. No. That was never who she was. Gloria stepped further into the room. A man in a pinstripe suit scoffed. "Ma'am, this isn't the janitor's closet." "I know what this is," Gloria replied, calmly. "And I know where your money's going." Clara's eyes sharpened for the first time in days. "What did you say?" "Before you give up," Gloria said, lifting a folded document from her back pocket, "read this." She walked to Clara and placed the envelope on the table. Her hands trembled slightly, but her spine was straight. The CEO hesitated, then opened the letter slowly. Her eyes scanned the first page. Then the second. Then the third. Her face drained of color. This can't be. Everything in there is sourced from public records and your own discarded files. I didn't break any laws. I just paid attention, Gloria said. It was all there. A full forensic breakdown, evidence of embezzlement, shell companies, fake vendors. Someone was bleeding the company dry, not with a machete, but with a scalpel. Small cuts, precise, repeated. The thief? Philip Langston. The company's CFO. Untouchable. Or so they thought. Clara rose from her chair and left the room in a sprint, files in hand. No one knew what was happening. Executives whispered. One man muttered that it had to be a mistake. Another laughed nervously and suggested they were being pranked. But no one was laughing 30 minutes later when Philip Langston was escorted out of the building in handcuffs. His face red. His shouts ignored. Security flanked him on either side as police read him his rights. Cameras from local news vans caught every second. Back in the boardroom, the executives sat frozen. Then Clara returned. And she wasn't alone. Bring her in, she said softly. The door opened again, and Gloria stepped back in. Still in uniform. Still holding that notebook. But now, everyone looked at her. Clara didn't hesitate. She saved us. Every one of you sitting here still has a job because this woman saw what you couldn't. Because she paid attention when you wouldn't. Gloria opened her notebook. Page after page. She walked them through the fraud, calmly, precisely. Names. Payments. Methods. She explained how Philip siphoned millions, unnoticed, unchecked. She didn't ask for credit. She didn't demand anything. She just told the truth. And when she was done, there was nothing left to deny. The room was silent as Gloria closed her notebook. One executive, a man named Harlan, cleared his throat. Why didn't you come forward earlier? She turned her eyes to him, calm, steady, unreadable. Would you have listened? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The truth of her words hung in the air like smoke. They all knew it. Not one of them had ever given her more than a passing glance. She was background noise to them, a mop, a name tag, a function, not a person. But now, they were listening. And not because they chose to, but because they had no other choice. Clara leaned forward, folding her hands. Gloria, I want to speak to you privately. A few executives stood as if dismissed, but Clara shook her head. Stay. This is part of the lesson. They sat back down slowly, chastened. Clara turned to Gloria. You used to be a forensic accountant. I was, Gloria said softly. Before my husband passed and the world got too expensive to keep up with. I'm sorry, Clara said. And for once, she meant it. Not the corporate kind of sorry. A human one. Clara motioned to the seat next to her. Sit with us. It was a small gesture. But in that room, at that moment, it was seismic. Gloria hesitated, then moved forward, her mop left behind. She sank into the soft leather chair. No longer the janitor standing in the doorway. She was now at the table. She looked across at the executives. You have a culture problem. Not just a money problem. That's how this happened. The words landed like weights. She wasn't accusing. She was diagnosing. You've created an echo chamber. You don't hear anyone who doesn't look like you, talk like you, or wear what you wear. People like me, we disappear in rooms like this. And when people disappear, thieves have room to grow. A younger executive, Emily Tran, nodded slowly. She's right. No one argued. Because they couldn't. The next few hours were a blur. Clara called an emergency board meeting. The CFO's accounts were frozen. A task force was launched with forensic investigators. Gloria's notes served as a roadmap. But it wasn't just about chasing the stolen money anymore. It was about change. When the news broke the next morning, it spread like wildfire. Janitor exposes million-dollar fraud. Ellington Tech CFO arrested thanks to former accountant turned cleaning staff. Overlooked, until she saved them all. Gloria's face was blurred in some photos, but the story traveled far and wide. Every outlet wanted her name. Social media erupted in applause, then outrage. Why hadn't anyone seen her brilliance before? Why was she invisible until the company was nearly destroyed? One tweet read, "Black women shouldn't have to save the world from the back of a janitor cart to be taken seriously." The company's reputation was battered, but suddenly, it was also being reborn. And Gloria? She showed up for her shift the next morning at 6:30 a.m. sharp. Same cart. Same keys. Same quiet nods to the front desk staff. But this time, as she passed the executive floor, Clara was waiting. "I have an offer," the CEO said. Gloria tilted her head. "Let me guess, you want me to train your compliance team?" Clara grinned. "No. I want you on the board." There was a long pause. Even the marble floor seemed to hold its breath. "I want you to lead an internal integrity division. Build it from scratch. Hire who you trust. You'll answer only to me and the board." Gloria blinked, unsure if she'd misheard. "You don't owe me that," she finally said. "I do," Clara replied. "But more importantly, this company does." Word spread through the office like lightning. People whispered in elevators, across desks, in Slack threads. "The janitor is now a board member." Some employees cheered. Some scoffed. But none could deny it. By week's end, Gloria's nameplate was placed on a corner office door. She still wore her old shoes, but now walked past the same people who had once ignored her, with their eyes meeting hers. The day of her first board meeting, she arrived early. A young intern, Brielle, with nervous hands and wide eyes, held the elevator for her. "Ms. Gloria?" she asked, almost shyly. "I just want you to know, you give me hope." Gloria smiled. "You don't need hope," she said gently. "You need people to stop underestimating you." And with that, the elevator rose. Inside the boardroom, Clara opened the meeting. "We're restructuring this company from the inside out. We've brought on someone who understands what happens when power forgets people. Someone who has seen this company from the ground floor up, literally." She turned to Gloria. And the woman who had once been invisible began to speak. Gloria stood at the front of the room, every eye on her. The same men and women who used to breeze by her without a glance were now watching, listening, waiting. She didn't revel in it. This wasn't a moment of revenge. It was responsibility. She looked at the long mahogany table lined with shareholders, lawyers, senior staff, and Clara Ellington herself. She could feel the tension in the air, respect, yes, but also discomfort. Her very presence disrupted the hierarchy. A woman in a plain navy blouse and worn-in shoes now stood where suits used to dominate unchecked. "I won't waste your time," Gloria said, voice steady. "You all know what happened. Philip Langston siphoned close to $8 million across 7 years. And no one caught it because no one was looking. A few people shifted in their chairs. You weren't blind. You were distracted. Comfortable. Selective in who you trusted. You promoted the loudest voices. You ignored the quiet ones. That stops now." Clara smiled, subtly. She'd hoped for a wake-up call. She got a full earthquake. Gloria continued. "I've reviewed your internal audit protocols. You don't have oversight, you have decoration. Compliance teams report to department heads who have incentive to hide risk, not expose it. She pulled out a thin binder and placed it on the table. This is my proposed structure for an independent integrity and ethics division. We'll operate outside your hierarchy. Direct report to Clara and the board only. We'll hire from overlooked departments, people who haven't had a chance to be corrupted by office politics. People with everything to prove, and no reason to protect the wrong people. The room was silent. Until one board member, a woman named Candace Liu, leaned forward. Gloria, that's ambitious. But how do you know you'll get buy-in from middle management? Won't they resist this kind of inspection? Gloria didn't blink. They'll resist. At first. That's how you know it's working. A few chuckles broke the tension, but her point landed. And Clara backed her up. This isn't just a band-aid. We're changing how we do business. Period. In the days that followed, Gloria moved quickly. She chose a small team of unlikely candidates, an overqualified admin assistant named Marcus whose resume had been collecting dust in HR files, a lading single mother named Delia who worked night security but had a background in data science, a young black coder named Andre who had been passed over 3 times for promotion despite being the first to fix back-end issues every time something crashed. They didn't look like a corporate task force. But they worked like one. Gloria trained them herself, running mock audits, setting traps in expense reports to see who noticed anomalies. She gave them confidence and clarity, and in return, they gave her loyalty and tireless focus. The shift was cultural as much as it was procedural. Word got out that the new integrity division wasn't just for show. Expense accounts were scrutinized. Pay gaps were exposed. Hiring practices came under fire. Some executives began to squirm. A few even resigned quietly before being investigated. Gloria didn't chase them. She let the system work. Meanwhile, the company's financials slowly began to stabilize. With Philip gone, the bleeding stopped. Clara renegotiated a few contracts, cut unnecessary perks, and issued a formal apology to laid-off workers, inviting many of them back with new protections in place. Employee morale soared. Investors took notice. But none of it would have happened without Gloria's courage, and the media knew it. She was invited on talk shows. Asked to write op-eds. A popular podcast called Corporate Reborn did a full episode titled, The Janitor Who Saved a Tech Empire. But Gloria declined most of it. I didn't do it for applause, she told Clara one day, sitting in her new office. I know, Clara said, but people need this story. They need to believe in someone like you. Gloria looked out the window. For the first time in years, she saw the skyline not from behind a mop bucket, but from a seat with power. Still, she shook her head. I'd rather fix the mess inside than parade outside. Clara respected that. And yet, the world outside kept watching. Not everyone was thrilled by the changes. A quiet backlash began forming among the old guard, the ones who had gotten comfortable in silence. Rumors swirled that some executives were lobbying the board to scale back Gloria's division. Claiming it created a culture of fear. When she found out, Gloria didn't confront them. She made a spreadsheet. It listed every unethical action discovered since the division's formation. How many employees had been protected? How much money had been saved? It was hard data. Impossible to dispute. She sent it to the full board with one line in the subject. If integrity makes people afraid, maybe they have something to hide. The backlash ended. One afternoon, months into her new role, Gloria passed by the break room. She paused. Inside, 3 young interns sat at a table whispering. One of them, a girl in braids with nervous eyes, held a printed article in her hand with Gloria's photo on the cover. She was one of us, the girl whispered. Did you know she used to clean the floors right here? No way, said another. She's like, on the board now. They didn't notice Gloria standing just outside. She smiled quietly and kept walking. Not for glory. Not for headlines. But because she knew, what had started as a single voice in a silent room had now become a chorus. People were noticing. People were learning. And this time, they were listening. Gloria's transformation from invisible janitor to corporate architect hadn't just changed the company. It had changed the people within it. And yet, not everyone was ready for change. One afternoon, as she walked toward her office, she found her door propped open. A man in an expensive suit, early 60s, thin smile, Gerald Knight, longtime VP of Strategic Operations, was standing in her office, arms folded, reading a report on her desk like it belonged to him. "You know, this division is starting to scare people," he said, not bothering with a greeting. Gloria didn't break stride. She walked past him and picked up the report from his hands, calm but firm. "Then let them be scared," she replied. Gerald chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. "You're changing the culture too fast. There's a reason corporate runs on order. You keep shaking things up like this, and the whole foundation cracks." Gloria tilted her head. Foundations only crack when they're built on something rotten. There it was, the flash of something ugly behind Gerald's eyes. Resentment. He hadn't just been comfortable under the old system. He had benefited from it. "You're a janitor," he said, the edge sharp now. "Don't forget that's where you came from." "I never will," Gloria answered. "But you should ask yourself why that scares you." He left without another word. That evening, Gloria sat in her office well past sunset, the lights of the city twinkling in the glass behind her. Her notebook, the same one she used to hide in her cart, now sat proudly on her desk. She opened it to a fresh page and wrote one word in bold at the top. Truth. Days later, the Integrity Division discovered something alarming. It wasn't fraud, not this time. But it was dangerous. Gloria's team had uncovered internal memos showing proposed layoffs in the customer service division, again targeting lower-level employees, most of them women and people of color. The proposal hadn't gone through official channels. It had been drafted quietly by a group of VPs, including Gerald Knight. The justification? Efficiency restructuring. But Gloria knew what it was: retaliation. An attempt to push back against her influence, sabotage her by blaming her reforms for instability. Clara wasn't in the office that day, she was across the country at a tech summit in Denver. So Gloria called an emergency meeting herself. The same boardroom. Different energy. This time, Gloria stood at the head of the table. Her voice was even, but her words sliced through the room like a scalpel. "Some of you think that because I entered through the back door, I don't know how this game is played," she said. "But let me be clear, I've seen every version of this playbook. I've lived through it. And I've beaten it." She slammed a copy of the memo on the table. This proposal didn't go through legal, HR, or finance. It was crafted in secret. It targets people you assume won't fight back. "But I will." One executive tried to interrupt, she raised her hand and shut him down. "We will not survive another scandal. Not right after what happened with Langston. If this goes forward, I will go public. And believe me, I have more credibility than anyone in this room right now." It was the first time she used her power. Not her title. Not her badge. Her voice. The room went silent. The proposal was shredded on the spot. Those who had drafted it were placed under investigation. Gerald Knight announced his early retirement the next morning. Gloria didn't celebrate. She knew the cost of every battle she won. But she also knew who she was doing it for. That same week, a staff meeting was held in the atrium. Clara had returned from Denver and stood beside Gloria at the podium. The staff watched in silence, waiting for a canned corporate address. What they got was something else. Clara took the mic. "We've made mistakes. Big ones. We let comfort become blindness. But today, I'm proud to announce a new leadership principle that will guide everything we do from now on. She stepped back and handed the mic to Gloria. Dignity, Gloria said simply. That's it. That's the word. She looked across the crowd. Not just in how we speak to our customers, but in how we treat each other. From the boardroom to the mailroom. Everyone matters here. And if you don't believe that, you don't belong here anymore. There was no applause at first. Then a slow clap from the back. It was Brielle, the intern with the braids. Then others joined. Dozens. Hundreds. The applause grew until it echoed off the atrium walls. Gloria didn't smile for the cameras. She wasn't performing. She was leading. Later that night, Gloria took the elevator up alone. She stepped off on the executive floor and walked into her office. On her desk was a small box. Inside it, a nameplate. Gloria M. Lewis, Board Advisor, Integrity and Culture. And beneath it, a handwritten note from Clara. For all the floors you once mocked. For every room they wouldn't let you in. You've earned your place at the head of the table, because you reminded us what a table is supposed to be for. Clara. Gloria sat down, held the nameplate in her hands for a moment, then placed it on the edge of her desk. Right where everyone could see it. And this time, no one would look past her again. 2 months had passed since the attempted layoffs were exposed, and Ellington Tech was no longer the same company. Internally, morale was climbing like never before. Transparency reports were released to all staff every Friday. Gloria's Integrity Division now included 13 employees, ranging from fresh graduates to ex-auditors who'd left corporate life out of disillusionment. With Gloria, they found purpose again. Externally, media coverage hadn't stopped. Gloria was offered keynote speaking gigs, honorary awards, even interviews on morning television. But she turned them down. Not because she was afraid, because she knew too much of the spotlight could burn the very soil she was trying to regrow. Ellington didn't need to become a legend. It needed to become better. But one morning, as she walked into the lobby, Gloria noticed something off. 3 security guards stood in a huddle, speaking in hushed tones. A large man in a blue suit, someone she didn't recognize, paced beside them, barking into a phone. She approached the front desk. "What's going on?" she asked the receptionist, a young man named Azim. "Journalists," he whispered. "From the Tally. One of their investigative reporters is claiming she has dirt on the Integrity Division. Says we're playing favorites." Gloria's eyes narrowed. "Let her up." Azim blinked. "Ma'am." She came looking for the truth. "I've got it." Minutes later, a tall, sharp-featured woman entered Gloria's office, notebook in hand, eyes filled with suspicion. Her name was Maureen Trent. Her articles had taken down corporate giants before. "Ms. Lewis," she said, voice clipped. "Mind if I record?" Gloria nodded. "By all means. You'll want everything accurate." The interview began with standard questions, about the Integrity Division's formation, its operations, hiring processes. Then Maureen leaned forward. "Sources say you've only hired people of color. Are you creating reverse discrimination under the guise of reform?" Gloria didn't flinch. She folded her hands calmly. "We hire people who've been ignored by the system, not because of their color, but because they're the only ones who've seen how broken the system really is. That happens to be a lot of people of color." Maureen raised an eyebrow. "So you admit you're not selecting based purely on merit?" Gloria smiled faintly. "The assumption that opportunity equals merit has always been flawed. We select based on potential, resilience, and moral clarity. Because that's what builds trust. You don't get loyalty from people you ignored, unless you start seeing them." There was a long pause. Then Maureen turned off her recorder. "That's not what I expected," I know, Gloria replied. Because people expect this story to be about a janitor getting revenge. But that's not what this is. I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to restore something that should have never been lost, dignity. By the end of the week, Maureen's article hit the headlines. The janitor who hired the forgotten, and built a new corporate code. It went viral in hours. The story caught the attention of someone unexpected. Elliot Graves. Former CEO of a rival tech firm. Billionaire. Conservative firebrand. Known for mocking diversity hires and corporate wokeness. He'd once famously said, companies aren't therapy sessions. They're war zones. Hire soldiers, not sob stories. He invited Clara to a panel on executive leadership in San Francisco. She declined. Then he invited Gloria. To everyone's surprise, Gloria accepted. Clara pulled her aside beforehand. You don't owe anyone your voice, Gloria. You've already changed this company. But Gloria met her with that same calm fire. Then let's see if I can change theirs too. The panel was held in a sleek auditorium lined with CEOs, investors, media, and policy influencers. Elliot Graves sat center stage, flanked by 3 other executives, and Gloria. The topic, meritocracy versus representation, who deserves a seat at the table? It was designed to provoke. Elliot leaned forward after his opening remarks, and gestured at Gloria. Gloria here, he said to a scattered chuckle, represents what I'd call the pendulum swinging too far. Great story. Very cinematic. But let's be real, companies aren't saved by janitors. They're saved by visionaries. Gloria held his gaze. Then maybe you need to question what kind of vision you've been looking with. The audience shifted. Quiet murmurs. Elliot frowned. She continued. You call it a war zone. I call it a community. A place where every overlooked worker has seen more about what's broken than the people at the top. Vision isn't about who shouts the loudest. It's about who sees the clearest. Elliot scoffed. We need winners, not social experiments. Gloria leaned forward. Then why do you keep losing people? The moderator tried to cut in. The audience was fully focused now. Gloria let the silence hold. I didn't come here to debate theories. I came with results. Our company was bleeding. Now it's stable. Our turnover has dropped 30%. Productivity is up 42%. We've rehired talent you discarded. And for the first time in years, people walk into Ellington Tech with their heads held high. So if that's your idea of a social experiment, then maybe you should run one. Applause broke. Elliot Graves remained tight-lipped the rest of the panel. When Gloria returned home that night, she sat quietly on her porch. For the first time in years, she let herself feel proud. Not because she'd won an argument. But because somewhere out there, a young black woman cleaning an office late at night might scroll past a headline and think, maybe I'm not invisible. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to change her life too. By the 6th month of Gloria's appointment to the board, Ellington Tech had become a case study across business schools nationwide. News outlets called it the Gloria effect. Ivy League professors invited her to speak about ethical reform. Politicians on both sides of the aisle quoted her insights. But Gloria stayed grounded. She still walked the same route every morning, greeting security by name, checking in with the cafeteria team, taking time to speak with the interns. She never stopped carrying her old notebook, though now, its cover was worn soft from use, and inside, fresh ideas filled every page. Then came the unexpected challenge. One morning, Clara stormed into Gloria's office holding a report. They want to sell us. Gloria looked up slowly. Who? Vantum Holdings, Clara said. Private equity. They've acquired a 28% stake quietly over the last year. They're planning a hostile buyout. Gloria narrowed her eyes. Bantam had a brutal reputation. Known for taking over vulnerable companies, gutting staff, slashing ethics programs, and flipping them for a profit. They weren't interested in innovation. They were interested in numbers. They'll dismantle everything we've built, Clara said. All of it. Gloria stood and walked to the window. The skyline shimmered in the morning haze. Beneath it, thousands of lives, employees, families, hung in the balance. Do we have enough voting power to stop it? Clara shook her head. Only if we swing one of the 3 neutral board members. Otherwise, they'll push it through. Gloria was silent for a long time. Then she spoke quietly. Then we don't fight them in the boardroom. We fight them in public. By the end of the day, a full employee town hall was announced. Thousands packed into the auditorium. Others tuned in virtually from satellite offices. Clara opened the meeting, but it was Gloria who took the stage and owned the room. She spoke without notes. Without slides. Just truth. They think we're weak, she began. They think because we had a fall, because we faced corruption, because we dared to clean house, they think that makes us vulnerable. She paused, scanning the room. But that's our strength. We faced our rot. We cut it out. And we rebuilt. We made ourselves honest. Transparent. Fair. She walked forward, eyes locking with the camera broadcasting across the country. I was a janitor in this building. I used to clean the trash of the very people who now call us soft. But I know something they don't. I know that when you treat people with dignity, they fight for you. They build with you. They stay. The room erupted in applause. Her voice never wavered. If this takeover happens, the layoffs won't start at the top. They never do. They'll start with our assistants. Our engineers. Our cafeteria workers. Our janitors. A hush fell. But we don't need to sit still. We can fight. The next morning, Gloria's speech had gone viral. #StandWithEllington trended for 48 hours straight. Former employees shared stories of how the company had taken them back after layoffs. Clients spoke of renewed trust. Current staff publicly pledged to resign if Bantam forced the buyout. Then came the twist. A group of minority shareholders, led by a quiet, older black investor named Ruth Allen, came forward and offered a solution, a counter-investment coalition. Ruth had once been a mentee of Gloria's in her early accounting days, decades ago. You taught me that numbers don't lie, Ruth told her. But they can be weaponized. Let's fight fire with truth. Gloria's eyes welled, but she didn't cry. She got to work. Together, they formed a block vote. Partnered with Clara. They lobbied the undecided board members with data, transparency reports, staff retention rates, long-term value projections. But it wasn't until the final meeting, when Gloria stood to address the board once more, that the tide turned. She didn't beg. She didn't warn. She told a story. About the night she walked into a boardroom holding a mop and a secret. About how no one looked at her. Until they had no choice. About how a company only survives when it listens to the people it's trained itself not to see. And when she sat down, the final vote was cast. The takeover failed. That evening, Clara found Gloria sitting alone in the executive lounge, sipping hot tea, legs crossed neatly. You did it, Clara said. No, Gloria replied. We did it. They sat in silence for a while. The city pulsed outside. Somewhere, in another building, someone like Gloria was still being overlooked. Still being dismissed. Still waiting for someone to say, we see you. Clara turned to her. What now? Gloria smiled. Now we build something that outlives both of us. 6 months after the failed takeover attempt, Ellington Tech held its first annual Integrity and Innovation Summit. What once would have been a stiff investor meeting was now a hybrid event attended by everyone, from interns to executives, cafeteria workers to coders. It wasn't just a corporate flex. It was a statement of who the company had become. And at the center of it all, Gloria stood on stage under soft lights, wearing a simple navy blazer, her signature notebook tucked under one arm. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. Her presence was unshakable. When she stepped up to the mic, the room fell silent, not out of obligation, but out of reverence. "I used to be invisible," she said. A murmur of recognition moved through the crowd. No one needed context. They knew her story now. Most of the country did. But the truth is, I wasn't invisible. I was ignored. There's a difference. And for years, this company lost millions because it trained itself to overlook people like me. Quiet people. Brown people. Women. People with rough knees and sharp memories. A few people lowered their eyes, not out of shame, but reflection. Now we do things differently, Gloria continued. We've learned that innovation doesn't just come from Ivy League resumes or corner offices. It comes from listening. From paying attention to what's really happening in the halls, not just in the boardroom. She looked out across the audience, then toward the camera live streaming globally. This isn't just a company that bounced back from the brink. It's a company that had the courage to look in the mirror. That's the hardest part. Not surviving failure, but owning it. She paused. That's why I'm proud to announce the launch of the Gloria Initiative, a national internship and leadership program for overlooked professionals across all industries. We're partnering with city colleges, trade schools, and community centers across the country to find the next generation of hidden brilliance. The janitors. The night staff. The people cleaning up after board meetings, because they might just be the ones who save the boardroom tomorrow. The room erupted in applause. Not the polite kind. The kind that says we believe in this. Gloria smiled, but only slightly. She never chased praise. She carried herself like someone who'd already known her worth before anyone else did. Now the world was just catching up. That night, she returned home late. Her modest apartment was still the same. Plants on the windowsill. A faded photo of her late husband beside her desk. Her neighborhood didn't know they lived next to a woman who had changed the future of corporate America. She liked it that way. As she slipped off her shoes, she saw a letter waiting on her kitchen table. It was from Brielle, the intern. Inside was a small note and a folded resume. Ms. Gloria. I watched every move you made this year. I'm not sure what I want to be yet, but I know I want to lead like you. You made me believe there's room for people like me. Thank you. Brielle Matthews. Gloria placed the note in her notebook, page 202, and whispered to herself. There's always been room. They just finally made space. And that's the story of Gloria Lewis, the janitor they ignored, until her brilliance became impossible to deny. She didn't just expose corruption. She rebuilt a culture. Let this be a reminder, your title doesn't determine your value. And sometimes, the people we overlook are the ones holding the blueprint for our survival. As Gloria once said, foundations only crack when they're built on something rotten. I'm here to build better. If you are moved by this story, subscribe to True Echo for more powerful, inspirational narratives. Leave a comment with your city, we want to see how far Gloria's legacy travels. And share this story with someone who needs to be reminded, your voice matters. Even if they don't hear it yet.